So please do gather around the campfire, because this is going to be an interesting one for sure. So yes, as mentioned, we're going to dive into immersive magic, which are two of my favorite words, and unveiling the next wave of festival wonders. So this is very much applicable nowadays more than ever, with the quickly evolving landscape that we see, I mean, in this room and outside of this room all over Saudi. So we invite some of our industry leaders to kind of to pull back that curtain and share their insights into the evolution of festivals and the cultural currents that's really propelling it forward. So the reason behind the festival, the reason for the changes, not just for change's sake. So we're going to be focusing on lighting innovations and immersive sound solutions to basically bring an audience away from their normal and fill both physical and digital venues. So let's just go down the line. If you'd just like to introduce yourself and your background, and then we'll dive right in. So let's start with David.
Hi, I'm David Gilby. My degree's in stage lighting. I'm originally from the UK theatre, film and television lighting industry, crossed over to architecture in 1994. Describe myself as a lighting and visual designer. The world that we live in has become so much visual. Excuse me. My design DNA is to find the narrative of a project, storytelling. That's what I like to do. I like to capture stories with light in space.
I love that.
My name is Aaron Mebin. Like David, I also came from theater. I'm originally trained as a scenery lighting and costume designer, and eventually I made my way over into architecture. That was a year after David came over. It was 1996 or so, 95. I run a lighting design group for a company called EXP. We're a professional services firm in North America. We do projects pretty much all over the world.
You know what? I've actually been really surprised about how many people have an architecture background that are now in entertainment or events or technology as well. There clearly must be some kind of link between the engineering and I don't know, maybe the psychology of fun, I guess.
I mean, people find the light, or the light finds you, and then you follow it. I'm from a theatrical family, so I'm trained as an actor as well, and I found the light and realized it's a creative outlet where I could earn a much better living than I had chance living as an actor. So I just found the light, it's grabbed me, and I've been following it all my life.
I mean, that's a really great awareness, and I think, like you'd mentioned as well about, and I mean, with the theatrical background from all three of us as well, you guys really understand storytelling and how, at the end of the day, if you're human, that is your primitive and modern instincts, is to make sense of the madness. and we achieve this with lighting design as well. We provide intention to a design to be part of the story. We're not just lighting it up to be seen, but we're lighting up aspects of things to give it meaning as well. So I'd love to know from both of your perspectives as well, if there's any specific maybe technology trends that you've seen that you maybe didn't see, say, 10, 15 years ago when it comes to lighting, or it comes to a storytelling element of a stage production. Tricky one.
Of course, you make me go first, David. God, trends. I mean, what we've seen changed in 10 years has been nothing short of remarkable, right? 10 years ago, LEDs were new, but now they are somewhat ubiquitous. Everything we do is based on LED, which is wonderful. Obviously, we're surrounded by it. But I think the thing that's really impressive about that is it's made it sustainable, but beyond that, it's made it so much more dynamic. And things that we couldn't do before, we can do now. We can change entire walls, we can change entire buildings, and it all just at the snap of a finger, which has allowed us as storytellers to have just that many more tools in our kit that maybe before we were limited by whatever the technology that was available. Now, it's almost unlimited in terms of what we can do.
I love the appropriate use of media, the appropriate use of projection, the fact that we can bitmap and 3D projection map. But what we must never lose sight of is context, because I've seen poor use of colour that's like visual noise, that's like a punch. I've seen inappropriate, and there's an elephant in the room that isn't always the lighting designer's job to provide content, but you should drive content. Because I've seen, I'll give you an example, I'm not going to name him, Mark Riddler, who was the head of lighting at BDP, and he persuaded a client to have a media wall in his reception area, and he said it'll set the mood of the space, it'll swim and dance and sashay. And they installed it at some considerable expense, and the client said to him, when is the wall going to start swimming and dancing and sashaying? And they'd forgot content. Now, we may not be the providers of content. It's great, it can be full-on animation, video, but we are kind of the catalysts. We have to be the drivers of it. And also I've seen things, I was involved, we put a 360-degree media screen in Birmingham on a round building called the Rotunda. And the temptation is to become a Coca-Cola and McDonald's world, right? And we persuaded the client to go with 90% local artistic and local content and only 10% advertising. Scroll forward about 10 years, and I'm the expert in the room in a planning consent permission with Vodafone's new headquarters adjacent to a conservation area. And they were told they couldn't have the media screen, the video screen. So they put it inside the building, so a metre inside, so it became a grey area. And Southwark Council was still saying to them, you dare switch it on, we're going to make you switch it off. And around them they have three great theatres, the Old Vic, the Young Vic, and the Menier Chocolate Factory. And I'm saying, look, why don't you make 75% of your content artistic, local theatre, local content, and only 25%, and you'll actually engage with the people that are trying to make you switch these lights off. But Vodafone, being Vodafone, just filled it full of adverts, and we ended up in court.
Happily ever after, I'm sure.
This is along one of those lines where it's just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
And then we end up being, in a lot of ways, the adult supervision to some of our clients, saying, yeah, we can do that. You can put in the media screens and cover the walls with LEDs, but don't.
Yeah, no, and like we were saying as well, perhaps then it's if it's not your responsibility to tell the story or guide it, it's at least your responsibility to understand that. And I think it's very much that thing of we don't speak to have spoken, we speak to be understood. There's a reason behind decision making, and if that's ignored, it becomes superfluous and it doesn't achieve, I'm sure, what was originally planned to achieve, whether the signage is inside or out, or the benefits of having it rounded. And then that, we discussed earlier today of art meeting tech and finding that balance as well. But you guys also touched on LEDs and a bit about sustainability, which obviously nowadays festivals, we have a lot more of a green conscious market that we're appealing to as well. And festivals are kind of notorious for that disposable material, because a lot of it would be pop-up. Nowadays we do see venues that are reimagining themselves to host. It may even be a cave that suddenly becomes a string quartet. You could put an orchestra in there. So we're seeing a lot of not reinventions but reimaginings and of current venues. So I'd love to know from both of your backgrounds in terms of a production, what kind of changes have you seen in terms of sustainability or venues?
The kit has just got so much better. Whichever way you look at efficacy, what we can do with it, circular economy, how things are built, how things are repurposed. So all of that. But inspiration is all around us if you have the eyes to see it. And who wasn't, Coldplay put on a whole self-generated, zero carbon concert, and fair play to them for that. And it really all just comes down to holistic design, doesn't it? It comes to not just looking at what you're presenting to the world, but how responsibly you're presenting it. And sometimes as well, less is more. Sometimes a story just needs a kiss of light and not a full-blown over-the-top party. So again, it's context, it's holistic design. There are inspiring places. You've got to bear in mind if you're talking like a venue or a nightclub, the contrast, what you don't like, is just as important in setting the mood and the atmosphere as what you do like.
I'm seeing is almost a reaction to these really over-the-top experiences with new experiences, just as David was mentioning, where you say less is more. There's a musical ensemble in the United States where I live, and they now, as you say about the kit, right? They've got rechargeable candles, so they filled this space with candles, basically, and then they get up and it's like a quartet, and they do their string quartet, and it's the most phenomenal experience because you feel like you're in a space lit entirely by firelight. You can't do that really, right? And you're surrounded by 500 candles. It is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I think that's definitely entertainment in whole as well, is if we can limit those consumables like batteries, even small things like that. When we talk about sustainability, it doesn't have to be putting solar panels on the roof. I mean, obviously that's fantastic, but it's not the be-all or end-all as well. There are smaller acts that can really contribute to a larger picture, and being kind of the kind of leading the directors in this industry, there's a big responsibility for that, and I mean, not a pressure, but a social responsibility as well, which you kind of can't escape. But what would you guys say in terms of the Saudi landscape, how they're approaching sustainability when it comes to festivals specifically?
There are some amazing developments happening here, and some of them, the dark sky is so important to them. And when you see, say, at our ULA, how the desert art, the light art, the sympathy they light with, and how they do these absolutely spectacular shows that are sort of almost in an arena of landscape, and how sympathetically they're still providing dramatic lighting. I think that's quite amazing. We have a light art festival here, the Noor Light Art Festival, across the whole of Riyadh. It's strange, I want to talk to them, it's almost too bitty. It's kind of everywhere. It would be easier to see, especially with the Riyadh traffic, if it was more sort of condensed into areas. I think there's a real opportunity here. There's such good Saudi talent in the universities and the schools, and what I'm trying to do this year, I'm going with the girls. I think the girls are the underdogs. There's an architectural school at Prince Sultan University, and I'm trying to get a light art piece that's their intellectual property, but I give them technical assistance to realise it. And I think that's a real great idea, to start exposing Saudis to that kind of thinking, to this, to, and I'm still staggered, all right, originally from the theatre, but when there's Plaza, there's light and sound, and I see so few architectural lighting designers there, and it staggers me that we're, that I'm not bumping into them in every aisle, But I think everything's about context. I think everything's about holistic thinking, and I'm not actually too averse even to a little bit of bling on a temporary installation.
just to follow up on what you said, David, I think that what I've seen here is exactly right. Is that the locals in Saudi Arabia have the stomach, and not only that, but the passion for creating the sustainable spaces. And so it's not just about dark sky; it's about being environmentally conscious for the animals that are around. They're putting their money where their mouth is and challenging the design teams to create these spaces that are extraordinary but are sustainable. And that is really invigorating because they're going to end up being the world leaders, and everyone else in the United States and the world are going to look to the Saudis to say, that's the way you do it.
Absolutely. And that all comes from that planning phase as well, and having the experts like you guys on the teams before stepping into development. We often call this kind of the golden age in Saudi as well, because I mean, just looking at the locals as well, you know it's going to succeed because they want it to succeed. So it's a safe investment, whether you are investing in a venue or if you're investing in an education program. And I mean, I'm the only one up here who's not got an architectural background, but from what I see with venue creations as well, it's also about celebrating the landscape, and it's about bringing the outside in sometimes. I would just love to know, we used the word immersive before. It's one of my favorite words. I'd like to kind of dive deeper into that etymology or the semantics for you guys when it comes to an immersive festival experience. What does that mean to you guys as lighting designers and also with an architectural background?
It's a great question, and it means a lot of different things, because one of the things I'm seeing is immersive experiences in museum spaces. So, the storytelling has gone up. So, and it's up to us as lighting and visual designers to sort of, an educational experience can be an immersive experience. Even sometimes, I was a speaker at Light Middle East in 2022, and they took us to Aya, which is an immersive experience in Wafi Mall. And I actually chose to go to the Women in Lighting event instead, and my immersive experience was hanging out with my peers, hanging out with people. It's a really interesting thing. On one of my projects, the lighting designer said, and we can have an immersive experience. And I thought, great, he's had an idea. And then, when it came to the pictures, what he gave me was Disney. But what we had was a falconry centre. What we had was something that needs a cultural immersive experience. So it still comes down to design responsibility and context. Now, you can have them all. I've got a project on every continent of the world. I've even got a project in Antarctica. And interestingly enough, only once in my lighting design career was I asked to design in a European style, and that was the floor of Macy's in New York. They wanted it more European. That's the only time. So I stick an India hat on, I stick a China hat on, and what we also have to realize is what works as an immersive experience here may not work as an immersive experience in Europe. And that's quite interesting, because the entertainment industry, I heard that Sting gave a concert to 5,000 high-paying people, and they're quite an immature audience here, and I say that as an observation, not as a criticism, and they didn't clap him. And Sting didn't do his encore, he stormed off stage, and it's just, Saudi is learning, Saudi is developing, and it's getting the right amount of what you think they want to what they want, and that's the important thing. And immersing yourself in the culture and learning what will work here is, so it's not an easy answer. It's a learning experience, and I'm sure even of Noor and of some of the immersive experiences, I'm sure there's been elements of it that have worked and elements that haven't, but the organisers usually learn quick, so the next year it's better and more culturally appropriate.
Just to follow up on what you said, David, I am seeing, you talked about storytelling, and I think our audiences are becoming more and more savvy, but they're also becoming more and more jaded, and they are becoming, they're almost reacting to the 6-second attention span, right, that you have in technology. And I'm finding that if you're able to create an authentic experience, people will absolutely flock to it because they're craving that interaction. They're craving the story that's there. And that's the thing that really will sell. And at the end of the day, it's a fireside, right? We're back in the cave telling stories around the fire. But if you're able to create that and use technology, bring everything together, then, it's magic when it happens. As you know, it's theater.
Yeah, no, for sure, and definitely Saudi is so young in that sense, and equally so that it may be their duty to learn, but it's also our duty to kind of teach and inspire, which is why it's so great to have events like today. And yeah, just going off of that 6-second kind of attention span as well. Obviously, if you're then lighting for a younger audience, your lighting design would probably be a lot more rapid, or that kind of scrolling that they're used to, of the flashes of lights as well. I mean, I myself have even noticed it, that a dance production, the footfall doubled once we started putting lights on the ground, because that would gauge the audience's attention, not somebody on a microphone saying, "Come on over, the show's about to begin," but the flashing lights and the strobes is a lot more attention grabbing. So are there any examples or case studies from your backgrounds where you've had to adjust the lighting design for the audience, or have you noticed that there's a shift entirely, just generationally as well?
It's interesting because it's a multifaceted question, and sometimes you, as a lighting designer, you may be designing for a brand like Rove in Dubai, which I think is great. I love it. I'm definitely not Gen Z, but I think that's who they're aiming at, and they've got a heart, they've got a soul. So I think sometimes you can target. I think we have the flexibility now to create kind of multifunctional space for different crowds. And I sometimes see in designs that are called multifunctional space, but there's no multifunctional, so you may as well just call it space. I saw an aerial experience with no experience, so you may as well just call it aerial walkway. So we have the technology to keep everybody happy, and I've seen that. Excuse me. I've seen that. I've done a lot of projects in India, and I was lucky to light the artworks at the Chhatrapati Shivaji Mumbai International Airport T2. The client is a visionary. He's got 3 kilometers of ancient Indian heritage art over 4 floors. Thousands of stories to tell, fish that swim, birds that fly. And just finding the narrative. But going back to India quickly, if you light an Indian residence, you've got young and old living together. They have different needs. Yeah, you have to provide the warmer light, more cozy light for the young, and brighter, whiter light for the old. In the UK, I designed the lights for Ian Hogarth of Hogarth Architects House. And his story is that his daughters and his wife love to dance. So he's built a nightclub inside his house. But we don't want to live in a nightclub every day of the week. But that same technology becomes white light and comfortable light and cozy light. So if we're thinking holistically, you always start with the space, the usage of the space, who's going to use the space. If you start that way and build the layers of multifunctionality into it, and the technology is all around us, it's very easy to do. I'm going to let you speak. and then I'm going to come back to something else quickly.
Fantastic.
Getting back to your original question, that 6 seconds, it's not so much, I think, as lighting designers that we need to be able to constantly provide that flash of where your attention, where you're pulling people, where you're pulling focus. Sometimes it's really important about what you're not lighting as well. I mean, obviously we can direct their vision. I find, again, coming back to that story, if you're able to catch them, you can draw them along as slowly or as quickly as you want. And that's the great thing about it, because you can bring them, just like in theater, right? You can bring them through the anticlimax and then the climax and get them to the end, and it is an incredible experience when you've done it successfully. If you hit them over the head in the front with a bunch of flashing lights, surefire way to turn people off. 6 seconds happens like 3 seconds.
It's something I just want to bring up. There's an elephant in the room in lighting design, and the elephant's there, but we're all pretending we don't see it. And there's so much sort of color changing technology, media screen technology, and I see so much with poor content. I see so much with stale content that doesn't change. I see so much with running on the pre-installed test data. And it's that thing about taking responsibility for the content. On my development, I'm trying to sort of use the right software and hardware that it becomes easy just to upload content, and that by making it so easy it becomes a dynamic thing, as opposed to something that's so difficult or someone has to be brought in or tune in from abroad. You know, this is something that we and it's just about holistic thinking. The other thing I was recently asked about, in Denmark Zoo, there's some lights in the floor and you can race them. So you can race Usain Bolt. These lights will go off at the speed of Usain Bolt, or you can race a cheetah, right? I'd have to race maybe a sloth, maybe a snail. And someone asked me how you do that. And in a lot of these cases, even with everything that you see around you, it's a package. It's a solution. It's not just a light. So it's the right light with the right program, with the right algorithm to make it work, and the guy that can program it. That's what it is. It's just a solution. So we got to, stop just thinking of it as hardware. Yeah. And in everything that we do, think a lot holistically. Context, space, usage, and getting that right package in place. And that's where the dream can happen.
Absolutely. I can tell as well, that's also from an architectural background, that the fashion follows the function, that there's a reason for the design. And right before we started, actually, you mentioned to me that lighting designers are like painters. And I guess in that sense, the space is really the canvas. So you wouldn't do like graffiti over the Mona Lisa, or there's always it's got to make sense in the space as well. I don't know what on earth is going on. So I've got actually just one last question, because honestly I could go on forever. I'm really loving this. But you mentioned how we touched a little bit on regional censorship, I guess, in the sense that you'd said, depending on the client or the location, some things work and some things don't, depending on the age of your audience. Is anyone here a lighting designer? Some things work and some things don't, where you have to put on your European hat or your American hat or your Antarctican hat as well. So I would love to know, let's talk about a digital space or a digital venue, because we're seeing a lot of concerts in the metaverse, in a shared mixed reality. How does that work in terms of who would be invited to that space? Is that still targeted at a certain country or a certain age group, or is there some kind of international consideration when it comes to a festival in a digital space?
Some things will always work. Class always tells. It was interesting that ABBA appeared as holograms of their younger selves. Yeah. And I thought,
brilliant.
Yeah, but I thought, who's going to see that? Who's going to go? And they sold out in hours, and so
It's genius, though, if you think about it, right? It's old and young. It captures everybody. And to get your question, the most amazing thing about it is that you're going to a festival with someone in India or someone in Iraq or wherever. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I guess in that sense as well, it is something that's already quite international.
And when we talk about classic, and maybe you're talking about a nightclub or what have you, whatever happened to glow sticks? There's got to be a place for glow sticks, surely.
I mean, there's a place for everything. I think as we've learned as well, and I learned all the secrets. If you put the glow stick in the freezer, it'll keep glowing a little longer. So who knows? Maybe my glow sticks are still glowing somewhere in Australia.
They're still there, David. Now they're just rechargeable and they're LED.
They're sustainable now.
Yeah, they're sustainable.
There's a wonderful film called The Field of Dreams, and the whole premise of it is if you build the field, they'll come. So a guy built a baseball field in the middle of a desert, and he didn't expect anyone to come. Great, I didn't cry at the end, but I did have like a little bit of dust or something in my eye. And it's generally, if you put the thought in, if you put the consideration, if you think holistically, and you do something classy, classic, people will come.
Be authentic.
Yeah.
Tell the story. People will see right through it. So if you start off with the pure and honest story, it will resonate.
And it will connect. Yeah, it'll connect and it'll work. And like you said, it's primitive instinct as well. It's always been the case, and now more so than ever, especially when there is less of that human touch and human connection. And this event and entertainment space is all about escapism, so it's more important than ever. So we can keep on going, but we'd love to invite all of you into the discussion as well. If anybody has any questions for our panelists, we've got a roaming microphone. Thank you so much, Mark. If you guys have any questions, be related about absolutely anything, about festivals, about lighting design, about Antarctica, anything. I don't know.
Just quickly, I'm the standing keynote tomorrow.
Yes.
And I'm talking about lighting of tomorrow. And it's Kurt who couldn't make it here. Yeah, he got stuck. I'm giving my own version of his topic. But one of the things he talked about was the happiness factor. And in everything that we do, that's something to consider.
If it doesn't spark joy, throw it out. And I think everything we've kind of said, what can be echoed is really doing the homework and knowing the market you're trying to reach, or knowing what's not there in the market. And when there's so much to consume so quickly, it's so competitive, you've really got to be the first or be the best, which is perhaps why as well the ABBA Voyage tour was so successful as well. It took new technology and it reinvented it. But in the same space, I'm like you guys were saying, that it may not be about cutting edge technology and saying, well, look, we have the newest, we have the best. It can be about reimagining pre-existing technology and using it in a new and innovative way as well, which I'm sure you'll see from a lot of the exhibitions around us as well, and a lot of the rock music that keeps on interrupting us. Well, we've just got a few minutes left, but I'd love to hand over to you guys as well and see if you've got any closing remarks.
You have to keep yourself what I call interested and interesting. I call it feeding the design monkey inside. And I was at a talk the other day. I went to see a landscape architect, Wally Chelan, amazing guy. But the guy before him was speaking. There was loads of students in the room, and he said this. He said, and this is the part you don't get paid for. I've got another way of saying it. Not everything in life is measured in dollars, and it's that time that you invest. You can't justify that time, but you can, because that's where the magic happens. That's where you find the story. That's where you touch people's souls, and it's worth investing in your projects and investing time in yourself to do that.
Just to follow up on what you just said, I teach at a local university in Florida, themed entertainment design, themed experience design, in a master's program. And one of the things that I'm teaching the students that are coming through are learning how to create these new spaces. Is exactly what David just said. It's not so much about trying to create the next dark ride or trying to create this next, physical or virtual experience. Is how do you create that experience that someone engages with, and it hits them inside their heart, whether they're learning, they're engaging, they're experiencing something in a different way. They are creating a memory, a moment for them to have that experience that they can take on with them forever. And so once they realize that, it's not so much about the next video wall. It's not so much about the next dark ride. It's about that moment with their family or with their friends or with their children. That's the thing that people are taking from that experience.
And don't judge me on my bad ideas. Judge me on my great ideas. Don't be afraid to have ideas. There's power in ideas. If people don't like your ideas, go away and have fresh ones, new ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't be afraid
to fail. 100%.
The only mistakes are ignoring the lessons, I guess. So we encourage those bad ideas. And if you guys have any bad ideas as well, please feel free to connect with us. Please take note, take action. If you guys still print your business cards, let's be sustainable and let's get rid of them so you can hand them out to anyone else here, and until we all have QR codes. But can please join me in a big round of applause as well for our fabulous panelists. Thank you all so much for sharing your insights and sharing your kind of creative approach to Festival Wonders. So I'll get you both just to stay here because I believe the paparazzi would love a photo of us all together. And for everyone else, if you'd love to stick around, we have another think tank panel coming up, which will be moderated by Mark. And this will be focusing on design and light alchemy, revitalizing museum through design and lighting. So
yes, and we're going to ask these two gentlemen on your panel to join us for the next panel.
Oh, we'll get nice.
Because they're so good.
Honestly, yeah.
Yeah, and two more. We'll have two more as well. But thank you very much, and thank you, Nick, for a great session. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Would you like to stay for the photograph?